calling from?
We're in Oklahoma City today, and man, I woke up to it's been a deluge of a thunderstorm, and thick fog. Couldn't even see out the window. And now it's kind of lifting. I mean, now the cloud cover is, it's dark and lead, but it's, I can actually see the building across the street.
The days get better as they go along.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think tonight's show is one of the few that are actually indoor, and I think that's going to be. That's probably at this moment being very much celebrated by the crew who are doing the setup.
I can imagine. I can imagine. It's almost the 1-year anniversary of the mission.
It is. It will be. I think in a few days. Actually, was the release date, and we're thrilled with this record. I mean, it really is. And it's remained on Billboard, the classic rock chart, for almost the entire year straight. It fell off, I think, about 6 months ago, and then it came right back on again, and remains there. And now it's climbing again, because as soon as we start doing these shows, it's amazing how it just brings interest back to it. And we're playing we're actually doing 4 pieces from it on this tour, and it's fantastic to look out and see pockets of the audience that know the album so well, and how they suddenly jump up and start screaming out the words to Radio Silence or The Outpost, and really gratifying, especially for Tommy and JY and Chuck, who they've been doing this. They're closing in on 50 years. To have a new piece of music that's really connecting with people is really gratifying.
Does that surprise you though?
Actually, I wish it did surprise me. It doesn't really, quite honestly, because I've seen, after playing, I'm probably over 2,000 shows now with Styx, and I'm in my 20th year. I've seen too many legions of people around the world that just love the band, and I've also seen in the last 12 years, let's put it at that arbitrarily, maybe 13 years, as the audience skews younger and younger, and where on any given night, as much as half the audience can be under 30 years of age. I know how much they love the classic rock sound, and how they've been drawn to it for a myriad of reasons. And this record lives up to that. It sounds like it because it was made that way. It was made as if it was 1979. We recorded it on tape. We wrote the songs in a way where we felt they would stand alongside the Styx classics, and we really didn't. We stayed within the kind of the margins, so to speak, of what a classic rock album is, and particularly a Styx album. And so we all kind of had a feeling there are going to be Styx fans out there who really embrace this record. And the fun has been the debate online. You'll see them debating where in the top 5 Styx albums of all time, where is the Mission? And it's great to see the numbers of people that say, oh no, it's the second best. It's Grand Illusion first, and then it's the Mission, and then it's Pieces of 8, or then it's Pieces of 8 first, then Grand Illusion, then the Mission, then Cornerstone, and no, it's not, and then every once in a while you get people going, no, the Mission is the best record they've ever made, and then the other 4, and so it's those are the ones that we're really cheering for, but the beauty of it is, the fact that the band is still connecting with people, and that there's still this ongoing debate and discussion about what the band's doing right, what we're doing wrong, etc., and what's really getting people excited, and that's really part of the lifeblood of a band and how it's lasted this long.
So what's the debate about what you're doing wrong? I mean, I can't see anything that you're doing wrong.
Oh, no. I don't think so. But you see, that's your Canadian perspective there kicking in. There's whenever, for example, there's a change in the set list, or we're playing something that we haven't played, or we're neglecting to play something that people feel we should play, or of course the ongoing, any member change at all. I happen to be at the center of probably the most monumental change they made when
Right.
they parted ways with Dennis DeYoung and I came into the band. But there are also people who will debate, John Panazzo and Todd Zuckerman, and they'll debate John Strelowski, believe it or not, from the 70s, the first 5 albums, and Tommy Shaw. It's amazing how far back it goes, but that's part of the love of the band. I mean, I when I saw the Rolling Stones about 3 years ago, I'm looking at the band and I just accept entirely, but I'm thinking, God, Ron Wood, he's the third guitarist in that band. When I think back on the eras of the band and how there are people who will say, no, they were nothing after Brian Jones.
He's still the new guy.
How far back that goes, and just how precious we are about the lineups that we love, and what songs are their best and what albums are their best. I think the longer people debate those sorts of things, the longer the band is going to live.
I think the funny thing is, though, that all these people complain about all these bands that go out and do these nostalgia tours, and then when they actually do start adding new stuff, people complain that they're not playing their old classics.
Exactly. Well, that's been the dilemma with the Mission. It's really funny, sad, ironic, all kinds of adjectives. Last year, when the album came out, so many music programmers of classic rock radio were like, "Oh, we love this record. We really want to play it, but because we're classic rock, it has to be at least 25 years old." And we're like, "Okay, well, hopefully you'll love it in 2035, whatever." And it'll finally. But the true irony is that all these classic stations, they now have websites. They all added it to their website. Like any video we have, anything live of the Mission, it immediately goes on their website and gets played. And they really have been good at championing it. But what a dilemma. We're a classic rock station, but we can't play the new stuff from the bands that that we're championing.
It is a fantastic album, though. By the way,
thank you.
I was just listening to it this morning. I haven't listened to it for a while, and I thought I'd throw it on.
Good.
It really hasn't aged. I mean, I know it's only a year, but it's just as good this time as it was at the very beginning. We
actually, after the show the other night, we got our first copy of the 5.1 mix that's about to be released. To Universal putting it out, I think this month actually. And we just sat there and listened to it in the bus after the show as we're barreling down the road. And at the end of it, we all had big smiles on our faces and went, I think we got it right. It sounds great, and everyone's parts still work. The words are working. The intention of the record, the mood of it, holds well intact. It's a true concept album where there is no one song that it all hinges on, but an entire kind of vibe from top to bottom. And people's favorites jump around. They change all the time. My favorite changes all the time.
Right.
Right. When I listen to it. So those are all great factors. The artwork works. When I see people holding up vinyl copies of it in the audience, I just think it's like, well, it certainly makes me feel like no time has gone by.
Yeah, it feels like the 80s again.
It does.
Now let's talk about this tour. This is kind of a bizarre tour, and I'm super happy about it. I'm going to the show in Laval.
Great.
But I mean, you've got Styx, Joan Jett, and Tesla. I mean, that's a pretty good mix of music.
It is.
How are the fans appreciating this? I mean, this is huge to me. I'm a diehard Styx fan, a diehard Joan Jett fan, and I love Tesla. So
great,
but it's just so different.
Here's what I've noticed, Kenneth, in the last, I'd say in the last 7 or 8 years, as the definition of what classic rock is, because we're always fighting with these terms, but as it's broadened, there's a much wider swath of people who are willing to embrace something that may have been outside of what they loved at the time that it came out. So if I speak personally on that, I was such a progressive rock fan, such a diehard progressive rock fan, that I had room for the 5 top prog bands and maybe 2 other bands back when I was like a teenager and kind of, and starting early on in music. It was, if it wasn't Yes, Genesis, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Jethro Tull, and then I would like, I had the kind of the the alternating fifth band would be either Queen, Elton John, or like that was always the periphery one,
Right.
or the Guess Who or Chicago. Those were kind of coming a little bit. If it wasn't that, I really wasn't into it. And yet now, I hear things that that didn't really weren't central to what I loved back then, and suddenly I can hear them perfectly alongside stuff that I loved. I can listen to the Lamb Lies Down on Broadway and immediately go into a Fleetwood Mac Rumors song, whereas I couldn't have done that in the past. And it makes me think, wow, what a great tour that would be. Fleetwood Mac and Genesis, like there's a wider array of bands that I can actually hear together alongside each other. And when I think of what we've done in the last 7 years, I mean, Styx have toured with Yes, and now we've toured with Joan Jett. That's about as wide as you can get, really.
Absolutely.
And in between, we've had Def Leppard, and REO Speedwagon, and Foreigner, and Boston. But I love when there's an extreme there in a way, and I think that's part of what just leads to the enjoyment of the show so much.
Absolutely. It's funny you mentioned that. I was just talking to a buddy of mine the other day and talking about this interview, and he said, Styx was one of those bands in the 80s when we were in school where you kind of didn't admit it that you were a big fan because they weren't Van Halen and Metallica, and which it was big then. And now it's funny because everybody I talk to, punk fans, metal fans, everybody loves Styx.
That's really what we were just discussing there. That really is part of it. Is that it's actually in the late 70s that you couldn't escape Styx. In the late 70s, from 76 to let's say 81, they were inescapable. They were absolutely ubiquitous on the radio, on everything. And then when the video age came in, they, like many other bands, fell into that category of they're not a new hip thing. I was really into that, but I'm not even going to mention it.
Right.
And then more time goes by, and the bands that were so championed in the 80s are suddenly they become the guilty pleasures of people in the 90s they don't want to admit to.
Right.
So it's a funny thing about music. Every decade you have these acts that surface, and that they have to kind of go away, or at least be non-admitted to.
Right.
if that's a phrase. For a little while, until finally enough people share their information and say, yes, it turns out that I actually am a gigantic fan of Depeche Mode. Don't tell anyone.
Good example. And I mean, this is proof. I mean, I've been checking out your set list, and I've been reading the comments on your posts on Facebook, and this is exactly where Mr. Roboto comes in.
Okay.
People back in the day said, "Oh my God, what happened to Styx?" And now you're playing it, and everyone's saying, "My God, that's a great song."
He's always been a controversial figure.
Absolutely.
There was I recall when that song came out. It came out right around the time that other giant bands of the 70s were trying to make the transition into the 1980s, and they were grappling with, we have to sound fresh. And I when I think of Queen, for example, when I think that they went just within a few years, they went from "We Will Rock You," and then suddenly in the 80s kick in. It's it's body language and
Radio Gaga.
Exactly. All this stuff that they really avoided, publicly avoided in the 70s, but they tried to make that transition. I think with Styx, they came up with such a unique and quirky song, and such a left turn for a band that was, to my mind, was part of the prog movement. Even though they had some giant pop songs, they still there was most of the prog side of the band, the artsy stuff that they were doing that more kind of like pop prog in a way.
Sure.
That I was attracted to. And when they did Mr. Roboto, that was right around the time, I think, when Gary Newman was doing Cars, and Talking Heads had similar kind of melodic, angular sounding pieces. And I think that was an attempt to come up with something that fell into that category. And it did. It really did. But it did divide in a lot of ways. It divided the loyalty amongst the following of the band. And I find it, the irony there is that I think it hastened them breaking up, because I've heard the Styx history only 10,000 times at this point. Because of that tour of doing Mr. Roboto, of doing the Kilroy tour, a lot of the animosity that had been perhaps under the surface began to really come forth, and this is, I'm quoting my history class.
Right.
And it led to them breaking up. Funny enough, in the late 90s, when Mr. Roboto resurfaced and was a Volkswagen commercial,
mm-hmm.
it was part of that happened right simultaneous almost with Adam Sandler putting out the movie Big Daddy. And that's kind of where I come into the scene, is that JY and Tommy called me and said, look, we know the band is on the rise again as far as there's cultural reference, etc. And we want to go out and play a lot, and like more than we ever have. And we've come to a crossroads where we're not going to be touring with Dennis DeYoung in the band, and we'd like to know if you'd like to do it. So that's really where I come into the picture. So really anything was fine for me to play. I was fine to play Mr. Roboto right off the bat. The only song that we ever discussed, leaving off the set list was Babe, and that was mainly because when I did a couple of shows with them in Montreal and Quebec City, and I just talked about this on the Dan Rather interview. It's like it was a song that Dennis DeYoung made very evident in his long intro to the song. It was a song for his wife, and I thought, I'm coming into a band, and I don't want to just immediately start saying, so here's a song that Dennis DeYoung wrote for his wife.
Yeah, it doesn't quite fit.
That's going to be an uncomfortable piece to do. So it was that very first meeting, Tommy Shaw goes, no, let's not do that. Let's do a Criminal Mind instead. And I was like, oh, I'm going to enjoy this band, and that's why we play a Criminal Mind. We do, whenever it surfaces, usually about 10 or 15 times a year, depending on where we are.
Well, hopefully it does in Montreal.
And I got a good feeling about it, but you never know. You never know. I don't mind playing songs from the Mission. If we have to sacrifice a song from the Mission, I don't know if I'd want to do that in a Styx show.
Right.
But rest assured, there's Gowan shows are on the rise again, and it's featured highly in those ones. Yeah, because I've been playing solo shows now annually since 2010.
What about new music, solo music?
Well, I have new music, and it's recorded, and I'm really as proud of it as I am of the Mission. But I don't want to throw it out there and not be able to really support it and tour extensively with it and promote it to the degree. I don't want to, especially now in the internet age, things can get lost if you just toss them out there and you don't have the follow-up support and proper positioning and visibility.
Right.
So with Styx, I just feel like, no, I as soon as we said we were putting the Mission out last year, I thought, no, that's it. I'm putting my own solo thing, which is ready, by the way. I'm putting that on hold, and maybe I'll add something new to it along the way. It'll open an opportunity to extend it a little bit, but I don't want to just throw it out there until I have the time to really focus on how to promote it.
Gotcha. Okay, I'm going to put you on the spot here.
I don't mind.
I want you to give me one or two adjectives to describe each member of Styx.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So let's start with Tommy.
Okay, one or two adjectives. Okay. It's tough because I know all sides of these guys' personality, but I'm trying to think of the thing that stands out most.
This might be too tough.
It might be. It might be. I'll extend a little bit. Tommy is the greatest performer I've ever been on stage with, I have to say, because there's never a moment of of weakness or uncertainty, you know. And although that's true of every member of this band, there's something about his spirit on stage is infectious. I'd say it comes down to he's an infectious spirit when he performs.
Wow,
there's no way you can't look away. You know, you can't look away when that guy is performing. He really is captivating.
Yeah, he's probably my number one influence.
Wow.
Ever in music.
Yeah,
for sure.
He when I step on stage with him, I know everything's going to go great. I just know it. There's no question. Even when he doesn't have a voice, you know, occasionally, I mean, that's happened rarely, but there were a couple of nights where I had to sing his songs, and just walked out. He walked out into the crowd as I was singing and did an absolutely unbelievable job of making it just as entertaining as ever. And I didn't want to repeat that. The next day, but he knows exactly how to embrace the moment and make it something really meaningful to people. So yeah. So what did I say before?
Something spirit. I forget.
A captivating spirit.
Captivating spirit. Right.
Yeah. A captivating musical spirit. Put music on.
There you go.
Yeah.
JY.
A mountain of musical strength is really what he is, and remarkably strong, unique. You know, and as I say, a mountain of musical strength.
Very cool, and
I guess.
Yeah.
Okay.
Some of my favorite solos ever, JY.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we did a radio, a TV thing the other day. We were discussing. Tommy was talking about the fact that I can't figure out what JY is playing. You know, I know what it was. We're on that DVD 5.1 I was telling you about the mission.
Right.
Tommy and our producer Will Ivankovich are talking about the album. They were talking about Gone, 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 and JY's. So again, his solo. You're like, there's nobody else solos that way. It's a unique approach to the instrument, and I don't think anyone can duplicate it.
I've often wondered if he can duplicate it every night.
It's funny. It's like he does have to, you know, occasionally he has to sit down and figure out what he did.
Yeah, because it's really off the cuff.
Well, it's off the cuff, and actually, there's more to that statement than you think. It is off the cuff because he uses a Sustainiac on his guitar, and he does a lot of the solos are just left hand. He's like, he'll pluck one note, but then it's all pull-offs and kind of quick hammer-on riffs that he does with his left hand, and you're like, oh my God, I don't know how you would teach that. You know,
yeah.
It's not like a Van Halen solo where you can break it down into this little section, this little section. There's a flow that's unique to the twitch in his fingers.
Interesting.
Anyway, yeah.
Now here's something I've always wondered about two guitar bands. How do they decide who does the solo? Do they just kind of have a battle of chops and see who does the best one?
Good one. I don't think they do it that way, quite honestly. I watched, well, both this record and Cyclorama, which those are the only two full studio records I've done with the band. Well, we did Big Bang Theory as well, and that was divided up between, well, look, when we do the Hendrix song, JY's going to do the solos on that one, and when we do the Traffic song or something, Tommy's going to do the solos on that one.
Right.
So, no, it really isn't so much a battle as it's great. They kind of instinctively know that where a song is moving. It's like, okay, Tommy's going to play this solo in this song. You know, this is going to be a Tommy Shaw solo song, and you know. So if you know the album, for example, Gone, Gone, Gone that's absolutely going to be a JY solo, because I can tie that song in some ways to like Midnight Ride, you know, from Equinox way back when. So you see what I mean? So there's kind of a lineage there. Radio Silence, you go, no, that's a Tommy solo because I can tie that song to, say, Man in the Wilderness or Crystal Ball. You know, I can kind of go, okay, so that's kind of his wheelhouse there is to immediately take something like that. But there are exceptions, you know, like at the end of the Outpost, it surprised me that it was JY that stepped forward and came up with that kind of clanging. It reminds me a bit of something the Edge would do.
Yeah.
And again, that's another surprise to me that JY he's doing kind of a high pedal thing, which is, you wouldn't think that he would necessarily go for that, and that's exactly what he did, and it lived, you know. I think it's what puts the smile on everybody's face right off the bat is really what winds up being the best. And I love when they do the twin solos as well, and that's you know they're just a harmonized solo where they're a third apart or something like that. I really enjoy those a lot.
Yeah, they're fun.
I think those are actually my favorite. Yeah.
That's very cool. I've always wondered that. Okay, cool. Thank you. Todd.
He a music encyclopedia is what he is on one hand, because he is, his depth of knowledge of music is really, oh God, it's almost it's beyond admirable. It's like in some ways he's like a freak of nature. You know, he has such a deep musical understanding of things, but he's a drummer. You know, a drummer isn't the right description for him. He really is a musicologist almost that has superhuman abilities. That's just all there is to it. You look at him some nights, some of those things he does. I've gone to his clinics, for example, just to watch him do a drum clinic, and he does them all over the world. You know, he just got back from doing another one, I think, in Prague, and you know, the drum community is he truly is a god among those folk.
Yeah, he's
and
he's a good one.
You know, but it's his depth of musical understanding and insight that impresses me the most. So you can take any of those phrases there and hack them down into a few words, but
very cool.
Yeah,
we're running out of time here, unfortunately.
Yeah, sorry, man.
So
yeah.
I want to just one more. We're gonna have to skip a couple people in your band, but I want to get to Lawrence Gowan.
Oh God, I'll never be able to figure him out. There's I think I guess when I look at myself on video or anything, I just say I'm an exuberant force. I guess is what I am.
You definitely have energy, that's for sure.
I can never contain it. I find it impossible to kind of, you know, keep it bottled up when the moment arises. I just, you know, adrenaline and whatever else happens when you're in front of an audience just completely takes over, and it goes where it goes. So that's myself.
Okay.
Chuck Pinot, I'll do Chuck really quickly. Just a wonderful spirit to have on stage, and Ricky Phillips, an incredible pedigree of rock history and knowledge of how to work a stage. Phenomenal knowledge of how to work a stage. That's ultimately that's the thing with being with Styx that's kept me so excited about it through all these years, even though, you know, for the most part, we're not playing Gowan songs, you know, other than the stuff we're doing from the Mission that I helped on. But there is something that happens when I walk on stage with that band where I just feel the lift and the fact that each guy on that stage is getting just as much enjoyment and life satisfaction out of it as I am. The feeling of that is really uniting, and it's a powerful cocktail to be around. Is basically it. It's quite intoxicating.
I can imagine.
And that's why I have no intentions of leaving it, you know. And at the same time, when I do play 7 or 8 Gowan shows every year, I feel just as even more connected to that, because that really is my own soul that's suddenly exposed.
Right.
For better or worse, you know.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, I'll end this with one quick question. Before you were talking about all these people who were fighting about what the greatest Styx album is of all time, what is your favorite Styx album that you're not on?
that I'm not on. Okay.
Yeah, I know it's the Mission, but
Yeah, yeah, exactly. No, the one that I'm not on that I think is the best is Piece of Fate.
Same as me.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's the best record. That one, I love the balance among the band on that record. They'd hit just that concoction where, just that moment where all the ingredients were just the right amount of flavor of each ingredient of the band, and that's why when we did the tour where we did Grand Illusion and Pieces of Eight back to back, that's where I really further discovered that is, in deconstructing the whole album and then having to perform it in its entirety. I really felt that was the perfect balance of these characters and these songwriters and how they approached their instrument right at that time, and so that distilled. It's the essence of that record that I'm trying to always, exemplify. When I'm within any sort of band discussion or musical moment.
Yeah, and actually, I named my daughter after some of the lyrics on that song, or on that album.
Really?
Yeah, Hannah from Sing for the Day.
And that's and Sing for the Day. That's and actually Tommy named his daughter Hannah, and it's after Sing for the Day. Like he didn't have he had her about 5 years later.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He just the song the name was in the song. He came up, he wanted to use that name in the song, and he then when his daughter was born, he gave her that name. So it's funny, the song came before the kid.
Yeah, and like I told you before, I'm a big fan of Styx. Always has been. They've always been my favorite band of all time. But yeah, that song always hit me, and as soon as I knew I was having a girl, there was no question. It was Hannah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. Yeah, so give Tommy a big high five and say thanks for the.
I certainly will.
Good luck tonight at the show and with the rest of the tour, and looking forward to the show in Laval.
Well, it's fun talking to you, Kenneth. That's great.
Yeah, you take care of yourself, and we'll see you soon.
We'll see you in Laval.
Yeah, absolutely.